Right.
Okay, welcome everybody to our Wednesday with WIFT today. Today we have a really fun opportunity. We're going to be a fly on the wall as the key creatives of the Cuban talk about their picture, the making of, the stories behind, and any other news that they might have about upcoming events with the picture. And we're very anxious to hear about that. I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank all of you on the panel for coming today. And for people who are watching, please use the Q&A at the bottom. I'm going to disappear off camera and I'm going to monitor the Q&A. So if during the course of the conversation you have something you'd like the panelists to answer, please post it in Q&A and we'll make sure that it gets done. I want to see, what was I going to do? That was the main part of what I needed to do. And right now I want to introduce you to the director of the picture, Sergio Navarrete, who will introduce his team. And I'm going to disappear now. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. And let's have at it.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, WIFT, for hosting this. This is really exciting. I think when I look around the virtual room, a lot of us have not seen each other for months. So this is kind of like a really amazing virtual reunion. And looking back is always fun because you forget a lot of the adversity and challenges that you face when you make a movie. So I'm really excited to look back. So thank you all for being here. I want to introduce the panelists. We'll start with Alessandra Piccione, who's the writer of the film and producer. And then on my screen to the right, we have Ciliana Cardenas, who's the DOP, cinematographer of The Cuban. We have Dondrea from Instinct, who's our music supervisor. Sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. You might want to jump in there and help me. Pardon?
Ira.
See, super easy. We have Jay McCrae, who's the editor of the picture. And we have the star of the film and producer, Anna Golia, who also performs musically, but we'll talk about that later. So I just want to jump right in. The first question is, I just want to give a bit of an overview, if you can give sort of a 30,000-foot view of how you got started in the business, if you had any special mentors, and what drew you to the film business specifically, because we're here to talk about cinema and movies. And so we'll start with Alessandra.
Oh, okay. For me, I guess I started as an academic, so I didn't really have an intention to get into the film business until, I was kind of on an academic track. I'd done my master's degree and I was planning to do a PhD. And then I got involved in this theater production where I got to translate a version of a Pirandello script. And the experience just sucked me right in. Like it completely, I got the bug, let's put it that way. So I started just kind of taking one step at a time, started working on short films. And I hadn't really, I had always had the desire to be a writer, but I didn't put it all together until after, until that point in my life. So I guess I came to it a little bit later than most people. But it's been a pretty exciting journey since then. Does that answer your question?
Ciliana?
Sorry?
Ciliana, yeah, just how did you get started in the business? Did you have mentors? Like, what was that moment that just got you into cinema and I guess helped you fall in love with it? Because you have such a passion in all the work that you do.
So I come from, my mother was a sculptor and also a painter. So I was always exposed to very visual arts. And it happened that one time he had a boyfriend who was a still photographer, and he gave me my first camera when I was 11 years old. But at that time I was a dancer. I danced from 6 years old until 17. I did the whole career. I started with Alicia Alonso in Cuba. And then when I was time to go to take the big decision, I say, no, I don't really want to finish like a teacher the rest of my life teaching kids to do, pas de bourrée. So anyway, one day, my mom loves film, so I always went to the movies. And like Roma, in the movie Roma, my mom worked, we are 3 girls, and my nanny, to do something with us, will take us to the movies. So she loved movies, so we will see 2-3 movies on the same day for 1 peso, and my sisters will run around the movie theater, and I was the only one looking at it. And then in 1984, I saw Blade Runner, and when I saw Blade Runner, something happened, and I just knew that I wanted to do that. And I applied for the film school in 1987, and I never imagined that I was going to be the first woman DOP of my country in film history, and also the first woman to finish film school as a director of photography. And mentors, I have so many, like Storaro, of course, Gordon Willis, Sven Nisviks, Itziak, Conrad Hall, many, and of course lately my fellow friends also, Lubeski and Rodrigo Prieto, of course. But I think the passion to tell stories with images, to become the eyes of the director, to become the eyes of the story, to transform a piece of paper, the Alessandra wrote so beautiful, and then manifested into your vision, Sergio, with my help. But I think that's the most important thing for me, the story. The story is the one that drives and it makes me dream. And I still think that I want to keep doing magic. I want to keep doing magic with you and with all of you. And having a director like you is been making magic with my friend now, because you are my friend, not just my director. And thank you so much, really, for this opportunity.
And thank you. You've been a mentor and a muse. When a DOP can talk about Fellini and Antonioni and Kubrick, you start to geek out. It's really inspiring. So thank you. And D'Andrea?
Oh, Ciliana, that was a great answer. I could just hear you talk about your experience this entire hour. But
so music supervision, like how do you get into that? Like, was there somebody that said, hey man, this is a really cool way to pursue a career because you love music so much and you have a background in music?
Yeah, I actually grew up a musician. I was a singer-songwriter when I was a teenager. I went to a music industry arts program in London, Ontario, and that's kind of where I learned the business side of the music industry. And we briefly touched up on music supervision, which really spoke to me because I was always in love with the music that I heard in TV shows that I was growing up with and films that I watched. But didn't actually really comprehend that was somebody's job, like full-time job. So when I kind of realized that was an opportunity, I was pretty dead set on trying to make that, my career. And I moved to Toronto. I met Michael Perlmutter, who I work with, lovely Michael Perlmutter at Instinct. And he kind of took me under his wing. I had no experience as a supervisor, and he just really trusted in me, and we've been working together almost 9 years now, which is amazing. And it's been a great journey. I love it so much because it bridges my love for music and film and TV at the same time. I get to work in both worlds. So
it's so important. I think we can all recall moments when you hear a song, it takes you back to a scene or just a moment when you watched a movie, and it's such an important part of the whole process.
Yeah, totally.
And Jane?
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting hearing everyone's background. It's so different. I loved movies from when I was a kid. Like I lived for Friday night when they would announce like the new movie that was coming to the local theater, and I would just go and watch it. And then if it happened to get brought back the next week, I would just go see it again because I just loved going to the movies so much. Like I loved the feeling of it.
Do you remember what movie? Like what was the first movie that was the turning point for you, or like something that was like a spiritual moment.
Yeah. So when I was 5, my dad loved movies too and used to take me to the movies. But when I was 5, he decided that it would be a great idea to take me to see Lawrence of Arabia because it was showing as a, a re-release in a local theater. And I don't know what parent takes their 5-year-old to Lawrence of Arabia. I think he was a little bit nuts. But I remember it was like the most exciting thing I had ever seen. And it was like a 70mm print, and it was bright and it was huge. And it was this amazing adventure. And I completely got hooked on it. And then, got it on video and like would race downstairs on Saturday mornings when my parents were still sleeping and like rewatch the video over and over. So that was my big kind of favorite movie. But I just loved, films generally. And like when I went to university, I did film studies, like film theory, always thinking that I wanted to make movies, but I didn't know anybody who was in the film industry. So it didn't really seem achievable. So I was like, well, I'll just study film and do something. And then every single time I watched a movie, I was just like, I want to make a movie. I don't want to sit and watch and write an essay about this movie. I just want to go make another movie. And it got to the point where I was like, I just have to try to do this somehow. So yeah, so then I went to a postgrad program at Sheridan College in Toronto, or just outside Toronto in Oakville, and had a really awesome experience. I think like a lot of editors that I know, I thought at first that I wanted to be a director. And quickly discovered that I really didn't like being on set at all. And it was really chaotic and there was too much going on and it was noisy and there was a lot of standing around and it just was not for me. And I had a much better time like kind of cultivating like a personal experience with the footage by myself in a dark room or with a director or a producer, but like in a small group. I think it was that just spoke to me a lot more. So I decided that I was going to do editing, and I got a job as an assistant editor, and I worked in reality at first because that's what a lot of people do when they come out of film school, because there's a lot of work in reality in Toronto. And then I did documentaries for a while, and then I sort of transitioned over and managed to scramble my way into some scripted films, including Sergio's last film as well, which is how we met before we did The Cuban. And here I am.
I remember that I had invited you to set several times, and you're like, no, I'm good. Which is cool because it gives you that objectivity that a director's always looking for, because when you're there and you're feeling the pain of mounting a scene, then I think it's gonna affect, it's just harder to cut a scene out if you're there and you're spending 12 hours or a week shooting it.
And it
so
also,
I appreciate about it.
A lot of an editor's job, and we can talk about this later, but a lot of an editor's job is sort of guiding a performance to create, to use the actor's performance variations and choose them correctly to make the character that you want. And for me, not meeting the actual person is really helpful. And just knowing the actors as the characters that they're performing, like half the time I don't even know their real names. Like I just call them by their character names. I think it helps me maintain objectivity that way. Yeah.
It's great. And Anna?
So like everyone here and everyone in the industry, it obviously started with a love for movies. Growing up, I would watch a lot of classic films with my family, lots of Shirley Temple, and she ended up inspiring me to start taking dance classes. So I started dancing when I was 5 and did that competitively. And when I was 9, my mom, who was working many jobs, wanted to get rid of me for March break. So she sent me to this camp that had an acting program and a dance program. And so I went mostly for the dance, and the director of the camp said that I was talented and should pursue it. And I thought it was boring. I was a very active child, so I wasn't really into it. And then he told me to go to this talent showcase. And as you all know, I'm a very competitive person, so I ended up doing very well. And just from there, an agent called my mom, and that was it. Like, I met her, we signed, and the first audition I had, I landed. And pretty much my first day on set was the moment that I realized I wanted to do this for the rest of my life.
Very cool. I realized that none of us on here except Anna are really used to being in front of the camera. So it's a very odd experience, because we're trying to very much be in the moment, but very conscious of the fact that there's like a camera on us. I don't know how actors do it. I really respect the actors' process, because, you know, they're always conscious of a big camera and a massive lens in their face.
I don't know how I do it. I hate
You know,
cameras.
what's my good side? What's my good side? So I can see how that could play with your emotions and just your self-esteem. How I just going off the Cuban for a second, I want to talk a little bit about COVID, because we haven't seen each other since it hit. How's everyone doing, and how are you finding ways to be inspired during this pandemic? And what have you learned? Like, what are the lessons, the takeaways? Because eventually, we're going to get the green light to go ahead and make other movies and other TV shows. So if we can just talk a little bit about that. We'll start with Alessandra.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
How are you finding inspiration during COVID? And what are the lessons, the takeaways that you can use moving forward as production starts to open up again?
So this isn't related to the Cuban specifically,
No.
because I had my head in the Cuban. COVID for me, even though it's been a terrible thing on so many levels, for me personally, I mean, as I'm sure everyone knows, the Cuban was put on hold because of COVID. We had our release slated for April 24th, but at all of our big plans, we had special events, we had all kinds of great things happening. We were working so hard to try to get our movie out there with A71, our distributor, and then everything just came to a halt very suddenly. So it really, for me personally, gave me a chance to take a breath and relax a little bit and reassess, rethink things. And it gave me a little bit more space. I mean, I know it was a stressful time, so we all talk about wanting to be creative during this period. But I think, more, especially in more recent weeks, it has really given me more space to kind of reorganize my life and to find some creative time to think about new projects. And I just don't know what the industry is going to look like post-COVID, but I do know that I think it's this circumstance that we find ourselves in is helping us rethink kind of everything. It's made us rethink, life, race relations, and gender equality. I mean, it's made us rethink pretty much everything. So it'll be an interesting new world that we're stepping into, and I'm pretty excited for it, actually. So that's my takeaway from this.
Ciliana, because I know in your world, I don't want to speak for you, but it seems like your favorite place is being on set or in prep or just being behind that camera with those lenses and with that equipment. I mean, how have you coped? How have you found inspiration, and how do you think, what are the takeaways moving forward?
Well, for me, it was very interesting. I was in Vancouver shooting my first American TV series for Universal Netflix. And I was there for 5.5 months. Previous to that, I did a second season of Dickstown. Previous to that, I did a feature film. So I haven't stopped in 1 year and 4 months. And I broke my ankle in the last shoot. And I didn't stop working, not even the day that I broke it. So working with crouches and wheelchair and everything, 15 hours a day was a whole lesson, a very tough shoot for many, many reasons. So when we got shut down, I was, thank you, God. Like, honestly, I had a month to finish the show in LA. I was just to do the exteriors now and everything. But honestly, I was so tired, but also drained emotionally. You know me, Sergio. I'm not just like I get involved with the crew. I get involved with the people, with the actors. And it was such a hard shoot that I really needed the time to, like, emotionally, mentally, physically, I was very tired. My foot was broke. So I had the time to have physiotherapy. I started working out. But the most important thing, like you say, it was like, I felt like drained of inspiration. So I'm like, okay, let's come back to basics, no? And I start seeing my beautiful films again. And why do I like them? And seeing them, haven't seen them for a long time, and seeing them now with the experience that I have, what I have lived, what I have learned, in what I have failed, and see all these films again. And what I start doing, I start writing essays about these films and why they're important to me, to never forget, what I have this passion for film. In the other way, I'm taking, just to show you, I have a history of art course, which I'm so excited. I'm relearning again, so it's great. I've been teaching a lot. I teach in Sheridan University, in York University, in many universities in the world. I have been doing lives for different academies in Latin America. I did a workshop with my society in Mexico. I've been involved with many other projects. I have personal projects now. Do I want to give visibility and voice to all the indigenous communities of Mexico? They are filmmakers, and I think it's so important to have a voice in the moment in time that we're living. And I'm working with my association to show this other film, to show this other cinema that is part of the Mexican culture. And not to try to make them the same as we are, is understanding their way of seeing life. And it's been amazing. It's been really good. What else can I tell you? I received the first script from my son, which is amazing, a great gift to me, and his first short story complete. And really it's been a very reflective time, not desperate. I think it's going to be great to rebalance everything again, even in our business. And I'm really positive that good things are going to come from this. Good ways of thinking, new ways of adapting, and forget how we used to do it. And let's forget about all these things that we thought to make films, when we really need so little to make them and tell beautiful stories. So I'm very positive. I think I'm ready to keep running. I'm ready to keep, jumping. My foot is ready. My strength is back. My passion is there. I'm ready. I'm ready to open the door and jump in.
I know before COVID, you were very selective. And that's one thing I admired about you, is that you wouldn't take on a project if it wasn't something that you thought you could add value to, or something that didn't move you emotionally. And I'm the same way. Like, it's if you can't add value. So we had a lot of those discussions. What has changed after COVID? Are you even more selective now, or because time is so precious?
I think I will, absolutely. And I think right now, again, I have a lot of offers, no dates, of course. But I wanna see at this moment what is important to me, honestly, to talk about this is, I want to do projects that I can open doors for minorities. I can open doors for voices that haven't been heard. I want to open the door to have an honest talk about racism, and, a lot of things that I really never thought so deeply before, Sergio. And I think it's important to us now to embrace them and talk about it. It's not just a thing of, oh, we're talking about, minorities and women. No. Let's really talk about it. So I'm looking for that kind of projects. I have an offer to go up to talk about the killing of women in Mexico. It's a very hard project, but I think if I can make it in a way that it will be cinematic and something to show to the world, I'm willing. I don't want to do a soap opera. And that's the way, Sergio. I think for me, for example, the Cuban, my mom just died a year before the Cuban of Alzheimer's, no? So it was an honor and was an homage to her for me to do this movie, and knowing, and sorry, but also confront so many things. And I did that. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea?
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking me. I definitely realize I'm in a privileged situation compared to a lot of other people right now. I'm thankfully still working. It's very quiet, which is bizarre, and I'm sure all of us can relate. You know, working in entertainment, working in film, working in TV, it's very chaotic. Our schedules are always crazy and changing, and that's not happening right now. I'm reading a lot of scripts. I'm learning to stay present more than I have in a very long time, which has helped me, you know, mentally and physically and emotionally. So I'm very grateful for that. I've been doing.
Are there rituals that you like? How do you do that?
I have gratitude. Like I've been doing gratitude journals on my phone. I've been writing down things that I'm thankful for every day because I feel like it's so easy to lose sight of those things. And by focusing on them, it's helping me immensely. But I'm very grateful, you know, like I have been reading scripts. I'm just waiting for projects to get that date of when they're going to start shooting, and just learning to be patient. You know, there's nothing I can do about this right now. There's nothing any of us can do. So just being in the moment, really.
Jane?
Yeah, I think I've actually learned quite a bit of patience and just kind of a way of moving a little bit slower, you know, just on a personal level of feeling, I overschedule myself and I overschedule my life, as I think we all do. And realizing that I need to do something, but I don't need to do it right now, is be like, oh, I'll do that next Thursday. Like something about COVID has just made us all slow down. And part of it is necessity because we can't necessarily go out to the, you know, the grocery store as often as we might otherwise, or just simple things like that. But it's definitely made me kind of just mentally slow down a little bit. That being said, I've still been working a lot because as an editor, you know, I'm fortunate I can work on stuff that's been shot already. So I worked on some projects that had been shot like in the winter. And I was also involved in a really cool TV show that was broadcast on YouTube that was shot entirely with actors in lockdown. So, and we edited it from home, and it was like a really cool little project. So I've still been pretty busy. I'm also on the board of the Canadian Cinema Editors, the CCE, which is an organization that promotes editing. And of course, once COVID happened, most people were out of work or working a lot less. So we really tried to like ramp up we're always doing a lot of stuff, but we're doing even more stuff now. So we've had a lot of master classes and events, and we're working on different initiatives. We have a mentorship program. We're checking in with everybody. So I still am pretty busy with all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's just been a really interesting time because it helps you to figure out kind of who you're connected to and who you have things in common with that are outside of the normal sphere of who you would normally see. And I've managed to reconnect with like some friends and family members that I actually hadn't talked to really very often at all. But now that everybody's Zooming, it's like, why not Zoom? And, you know, now my relationships with people that are, you know, 500 miles away are pretty similar to my relationships with people that are around the corner. And that's something that I'm kind of thankful for. And I think is pretty exciting. And I hope that that doesn't go away, you know, in the future when things go back to being something not normal, but something else. So, you know.
Anna?
Generally it's been better now, but initially I definitely had, you know, I had some issues and some struggles just dealing with this new world. And obviously you guys know, after now I guess 4 years of working on the Cuban and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, to then at one point not know what was happening with the film, and you know, if it would ever be seen by people, and what that kind of would look like. It was obviously very demanding. So it was nice to then come back to myself and reflect and think about, again, all the things that I'm grateful for. And you know, so many people have been going through so many difficult things through this time. So it's been a time of a lot of reflection and finding ways to stay busy. So I've been taking courses. I've been doing a lot of writing for my music. I installed a pathetic excuse for home studio, so I've been recording music at home. Doing lots of Instagram lives and interviews for the Cuban. So definitely finding ways to stay busy. And I think another thing that I learned through this whole, especially this pandemic, is that I love people. I'm such an empath, and I used to complain about, always happy energies and I was feeling so tired, drained, but I genuinely miss human interaction. And that was, I think, the hardest thing for me, but also I think the biggest takeaway is that I should never take it for granted when we share these moments with one another.
True. I want to jump into the Cuban a little bit. We'll start with Alessandra. What was the impetus for writing the script? What did it mean to you? And then I might ask you some more specific questions about some of the challenges and what were some of the highlights for you as a career moment.
Well, I mean, for me, the impetus for writing the script, it came initially from Taras Colton, who's one of our producing partners, as you know, but I mean, for people who don't know, he had a dream about his grandfather back in Russia, and he hadn't seen him in a long time, and he approached Anna. Anna and Taras were friends, and he approached Anna with this idea, and she said, "Oh, that would be a great short film." So Anna went to Sergio, and and pitched it and said, why don't we make a short film out of this? And it just snowballed. Like it went from this little idea to let's get Lou Gossett Jr. to Alessandra, do you want to write a short film about this? And I immediately loved the idea because there are people in my family who have Alzheimer's. I have an aunt who now she's basically like, she doesn't speak anymore. She's immobile, but she's in a home. But I remember back some years ago when she was afflicted with Alzheimer's, but she could still speak and communicate. And I remember that she had mistaken you, Sergio, for a young gentleman that she knew during the war. And ever since then, there was a seed of inspiration in my mind that, one day it would be beautiful to make a film out of this. So it was just very touching to me. And I think, as this whole story progressed and it got bigger and bigger, it snowballed. We cast Lou Gossett Jr. And then suddenly it was like, oh my God, maybe we should make a feature film out of this because we have this fantastic actor. And I just, I drew a lot from personal experience, but also from experiences that things I had seen around me that other people were going through. And
was there
and I wanted.
What was the most gratifying moment, and what was a challenge throughout that process? What was a highlight where you have to pinch yourself and say, "Wow, this is happening"?
Yeah. So it was funny because we knew from very early on that Lou Gossett Jr. would be in the film, but it didn't really hit me until I met him on set. And the day I met him on set, I'll never forget. I was like, oh my God, he's one of the greats. Like he's the real deal. It was just blew me away. I mean, every performer in the film is top notch, but so iconic. Huge moment for me. But one of the things that I went through the process of writing the film is that I was struggling a little bit, sort of putting the pieces together and creating the story and what I wanted it to be. And I remember driving in my car, and it was everything about this movie revolves so much around driving in my car and hearing on the radio. Has nothing to do with the story or anything like that. but it's the style of the song itself, the way it kind of starts out really slow and then it swells and it has this emotional impact, and then it gets really, really quiet again, and then it swells again. And I thought, I don't know, it carried me away for some reason. And I thought, I want the Cubans, I wanted like a piece of music that moves people. So that was sort of the driving force behind writing the play.
I haven't seen the movie, which is probably a lot on this Zoom call. If you can give a sort of a 30-second elevator pitch about what The Cuban is about.
Yeah, good idea. It's a story.
We all know what it's about.
Of a young who's actually an immigrant, and her role is played by Anna Golia. She gets her first job in a nursing home, and she meets an elderly man who has dementia, and he's played by Luke. Music begins. She uses music, waken him, and she finds out that he was a famous musician back in Cuba, and they develop this beautiful friendship, and it changes her life in the process. So that's the story. I think it's very relevant. I mean, everybody remember. I mean, people are thinking about those of us that are in long-term care facilities now, right? So it's incredibly timely in that respect.
And certainly our relationship to our elders, which in generations past, our elders were always at the backbone of any community, any village, any town, and now we're forced to think about that again. But Celiana, if you can tell us a little bit about your experience working on the project, and then I'm going to ask you some anecdotal questions.
I know you're
Cuba,
gonna go.
because everyone always asks about Cuba, and it's better coming from you, because obviously, I see in Technicolor, like, I'm going to idealize, romanticize what it really was. So I'd rather ask you, what were your favorite moments, and what was your experience like working on this movie?
Okay, so I mean, the whole process was great. Of course, with the challenges we had, of course, the not having enough money for what we wanted to do, not enough days, but we did the best we could with what we had. I think we did a great job. I think everybody was willing and passionate to find different options, different ideas of how to make it possible. I think I proposed to Serge, I said, listen, I want to give what you feel about if we do this look for the film. We both knew that we wanted something very cinematic, no in the format for, let's say, in a TV, the texture, the definition. So I said, well, what about if we go for vintage lenses? So I show him different options, and then I say, this is the one that I think is the right one. And we did a camera test, and he fell in love with them. And it's like, yeah, let's do it that way. So the lenses that we used was the Cook Pancros. And then the camera that we used was an Arri Alexa Mini. And basically we have a set of lenses, not a lot of equipment, So of course, then I met Anna. And Anna, of course, I met her since the first day as a producer. But then I met her like my beautiful actress, and I just admire you so much for many, many reasons. And then Lou, who steals your heart for the first day. And are some things, that we needed to be careful with Lou, because of course we're working with an actor who is 80 something years old. He gets tired, sleep. Sometimes it was funny, he will like not to move too much from out and in the set. And of course we were, a lot of time in one location. So he's in the wheelchair and I'm in front of him, and he will fall asleep, and then the music is like, hey, yeah, and it was just like automatic, like the little rabbit that you put the battery in and out. He was like, and then he's like, hey, la la la, and then maestra, maestra. He called me maestra, which means teacher. And, I'm, 5'2", he's like 6'3". And he's like, hey, Lou, do you want? So talking to him and everything was so great. And of course, Giacomo and the rest of the crew was such a great crew. We became really a great crew to work together, understanding all the situations that we have. Sheree, I mean, what I can tell you about her, when you see her in the film, the way that she transmits emotion with her eyes, and she's just amazing actress, and so thankful to be able to work with her and knowing her, a very loving person and very giving actor too. But the highlight, so the time comes to go to Cuba.
Here we go.
So first time we go, we have this person who helped us to put together Cuba. Okay, so we going Anna, Sergio, and Paz, and myself, isn't it? It were the four of us, and that was it in the first trip, right? And Taras.
So Paz is our first assistant director. Yeah.
Yes, Paz, our first assistant director,
who
who also
claims to speak Spanish
exactly.
Apparently.
So we arrived in Cuba. And of course, my dear friend Sergio, you have to know him. He's a gentleman. He's Italian, like in the movies, right? He has taste. He loves good food. He loves great wines. Well, you should see where we arrived in Cuba our first time. So Sergio like, Sally, what is this? What is this? And the hotel, well, it's not a hotel. It's an Airbnb that we're staying. In the bottom part is a transvestite bar, right? And we're in the middle of, like, inside the center of Havana. But like, Sergio's like, what? And we don't understand what's going on. Okay, next day, Sergio gets in the phone with the producer, or well, with the coordinator in Cuba, to get picked up in the next morning. By this time, it's like 35 degrees, 100% humidity. We're soaking wet. And the car arrived, and Sergio, what kind of car was?
1950s Lada.
It was a Lada, okay? This car.
Lada.
We
have a Lada. No air conditioning.
No air conditioning. So he has to sit in the back. We're like all crammed. We're going on location scouting with the art director, and the art director turned to me and said, "What is the name of the movie?" And I'm like, "Okay, we are in trouble." Okay, so then we make this meeting.
I think the whole prep. I think the prep for Cuba took as long as prepping the whole movie. So we expected that everyone knew what was happening.
What was happening?
We had a plan, but of course in Cuba, they live in the moment, and that's the most beautiful part of that culture.
Exactly.
There's no planning. No
planning, right? So we realized that then, Pepe, which was our art director, is like, okay. And I'm like, did you read the script? Did you know what it's about? And suddenly I'm realizing that probably nobody read the script, because guess what? Nobody speaks English. Okay, great. So we have the second meeting that day with the crew. Makeup, costumes, everybody was going to take care of the crew. And Paz introduced Sergio, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly I'm seeing like this, if it were a cartoon, we see interrogation marks in everybody. And I'm like, Sergio, I think we need to explain the movie. And Sergio's like, Sally, you go. And I'm like, acting the movie for an hour and a half. People is crying while I'm telling the movie. And I'm like, okay, this is great, right? So then he goes. And finally, the makeup artist come and now, of course, asked me to like, Sally, if they need something, let me know. Of course. So I'm going with the makeup, and I say, hey, did you need anything that we need to bring you? So because we're talking periods, so hairdos, you need baby pins, you need stuff like that. And like, oh, no, I have everything. I have brushes and everything. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she showed me the brushes, and the brushes were like brushes for painting paints, like brushes. And I'm like, Anna is gonna freak out, right? And I'm like, well, they're great, but I think we're gonna, and I'm like, Sergio, let's stop. They take me to see the equipment, and I'm looking at the equipment, and I'm like, okay, a dolly that I don't know how they put together. The oil was coming out, remember, Sergio? Actually, we couldn't avoid that. And some of the locations, as the dolly would move, it left a trail of oil as we moving in. So, but I mean, it was really great. And then finally came the time to come back and shoot the film. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you an example of what happened. We're in this beautiful salon. It's called the Red Salon. It was very famous, right, Sergio, in the 40s and 50s. It still has a chandelier that you will see in the movie. That is just like a dream come true. And we want smoke. And I'm like, well, we're gonna need smoke. And it's like, my gaffer tells me, oh, don't worry about the smoke. And I'm like, my gaffer is taking care of the smoke? Okay, we're in Cuba, everything can happen. Suddenly, he's like, also a guy very tall, he comes with me and he's like, you tell me when you want the smoke and I have it ready for you. I said, well, now, let's do it now. And I see him with a can of Coke cut in half with some powder. I have no idea what it was. He lighted up, he climbs a ladder and put it in the air conditioner. Like he goes into the air conditioner. And suddenly, I have to tell you that I have never had the best smoke I ever had in a shoot, because it was everywhere, because it came out from all the air conditioner in this place. So it was even, never had a problem. He's like, you just tell me when you want more, I put it for you. I put it for you. And I'm like, great, no problem. Another time, it's like, well, you know, I need a 6K, which is a big light. We have an exterior night. And I needed to put it in a building to have a strike of light coming as a backlight. And I go to my girlfriend and I'm like, well, you know, I really would like to have it there, but we don't get the permit. It's like, permit? Don't worry. I put it there for you. I turn around, I'm doing something else. I turn. These guys are climbing. Nobody's in the house, to the roof of the house with a ladder from outside, with a 6K in the shoulder, put it up. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay, so it's like, don't worry, we have like 5 hours before they come back so we can do it. And I'm like, okay. So stories like that were every single time, like every single month. So I just see the face of my beautiful Sergio too, like, Sally, are we gonna survive? I said, of course we're gonna survive this. Like, it was so many things that we're not used to because we're very organized, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And here's like, we just go with the flow because this is the way it works here. We just go with the flow. And that's the way we did it. And that was awesome.
Celiana, I have to say, I was the one stuck here while you guys were going through your adventures, and I was sweating, you know, freaking out, hearing the stories, like, oh my God. And I remember begging Sergio, like, please don't even try that scene on the Malecon, the very last moment when the car is right. It's the busiest. I mean, I've been to Cuba. I know what that road is like. And I know they talk about the vintage cars in Cuba, and you think it would be easy to get vintage cars, but the truth is in Cuba, the vintage cars have, like, you know, part of it is a Ford, part of it's a Kia, part of it's Hyundai. Like, it's just,
absolutely,
it doesn't look the way it's supposed to look. And when I mean, the miracle of how that came together is just completely crazy. But I just remember seeing that footage because I saw like clips of it afterwards, and I cried. I said, I don't know how you did it, but it did happen.
No, and again, you know, we were supposed to have permits, right, Sergio, to be in the Malecon, to close the street, blah, blah. Nothing was true, like nothing. So Sergio suddenly is like, okay, guys, and Paz and Mia were like, but Paz and Sergio, okay, how are we going to make this true? Of course, you know, we couldn't stop all the traffic and the cars. So we have this idea to have, how many cars were, Sergio, 5 or 6? To have 2 in the front, 2 in the side, and 1 on the...
Yeah, it was about 6 cars. Yeah,
6 cars. So
6 picture cars. But it's like the seas had parted at a certain moment. We had a window. And I just remember looking at Paz and just like, go, go, go.
Go, go, go.
And what happened was apparently the president was at the Hotel Nacional. So they had, there was a parade of cars that had shut down the Malecon for that 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We didn't know. So it was just like a fluke kind of window of opportunity, and we just shot. And I feel
And
like
it was right.
I have
It was
to say
right at
one thing, though.
magic hour.
There wasn't one single shot, if you remember, that we had planned, Silly, that we
Yes.
didn't get.
Yeah.
So like in most movies, you're always up against time and money, and you're always going to compromise something. This was the first movie where I didn't have to compromise a single shot or scene, which was amazing. So part of that is good planning, part of it's good luck, and just having the best people on your crew, you know. So.
And I think it's also what I was saying before, it's magic. Sometimes I think things happen to you and it's up to you to embrace them, be open and aware that they can happen and take that moment instead of, well, I prefer to have that, why I don't have this. And if the rules are no rules, let's go for the no rules. Why we're trying to, you know, to organize in a way that we're used to, but we're in another place. So it was a great experience. I think we have fun, we suffer a little bit, but the whole experience, I think, was great. And also we were living together, right? So Anna, Tara, Sergio, we were in this huge house, and it was just great because we became friends, you know? We really get to know each other, and really it was talking about the film and what we're doing 24/7, but it was beautiful. And for me, it's a really unforgettable time. Sergio brought us musicians. They were playing in the balcony. We were dancing salsa. The lady that used to help us with the food and cleaning, she was amazing salsa dancer. So it was awesome. It was really, really fun. And I have great memories of that.
D'Andrea, you probably don't have crazy Cuba memories, but
No.
you probably have some stories for sure from the trenches of trying to bring this music together.
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly a really awesome experience, and I had so much fun working on it, and also just learned a lot as well, which is amazing. Just in terms of, you know, Afro-Cuban jazz and the history of this music. And I knew some of it, but I definitely dove a lot more into the culture's music, and especially artists from Afghanistan, because we both have these two cultures. So we were, you know, diving into two very different cultures, and I was learning a lot through the process. But for people who don't know, music supervisors, it's our responsibility to help facilitate the creative role for music, as well as the licensing, to make sure we have the rights to use all of the songs. I met Anna through Degrassi. We worked together on the show, so we knew each other that way, and she had reached out to me with the script and was wanting to know if, you know, Instinct would be interested in helping out with the music for this project. And when I knew it was a music film, I got very excited, because it means there's a lot to play with, you know, which excited me. And I read the script and I was so moved by it. You know, I feel like everybody has someone related to an experience of Alzheimer's or dementia, and it really, you know, it definitely spoke to me on other levels. But I just loved the story of telling music and how these two different characters could relate to each other through music, and young, old, different cultures. Like it worked so well, and Alessandra did such a great job at writing all of that and making it flow well. But the challenges early on, you know, even just reading the script, there were songs Alessandra had kind of put in the script that she, you know, was hopeful that we could get, you know, iconic songs like Guantanamera and Quizás, Quizás, Quizás and El Cananero. And a lot of these songs, you know, they were written in the late 50s and in the 50s itself. So they're not, you know, what's known as public domain, which means somebody owns the rights to these songs. And because they're so iconic, you know, that can come with a large price tag sometimes. And working on a micro budget Canadian film, you know, we had very little to work with, but we made it work. And, you know, there's a lot of music throughout this, and finding Hilario and having him totally take charge of this creatively was so amazing and incredible. I think my favorite moment, to be honest, was when we were all in the studio with him and Alberto and all of the musicians that he plays with regularly, and just watching their talent of all of them together play live off the floor like they did, it was so incredible to just see how fast they were able to record all these songs. We did it in a day, which is mind-boggling to me. We had so many songs that we had to record in a day, and they pulled it off, and they're so talented. And it was really, really incredible to have Hilario come on board for this project. I feel so honored that I got to work on something with him, because he really is so renowned. And yeah, he really just took the legs of this project, and we, you know, used some of his original songs, but we also had him record his own style to these iconic pieces of music. And yeah, he made an amazing soundtrack, and I'm super proud of it. And I think, you know, it's a takeaway for people when they watch this film, is how important the music was, is, you know, another character of the story in a sense.
We had the music before we shot. So I remember prepping in the hotel room. It'd be like 5 a.m, and I'd be blaring, you know, Canonero or one of the other songs. Like, I think everyone by the end got sick of it, but the crew knew that between takes, I'm going to be playing music. And the actors, after a while, Lou needed it to kind of get himself there. And I think we all used music therapy, so it was very helpful to have that early on. So yeah, we really appreciate all the work that you guys did.
Yeah, I would appreciate it, especially because, you know, often what some people might not know, but like when you're working on an indie movie, there's a lot of luxuries that you don't have that normally, like a big Hollywood movie, like, yeah, they would get the music before, and the composer would start writing music while the film is still like in production. But like when you do indies, that doesn't happen. Like when you do indies, you have to edit, usually with temp music, and then you have to lock your cut with it as an editor without really knowing maybe at all what the music is going to sound like, or maybe just having like a small sample from a composer. So this was awesome. Like basically almost all of the music that you hear in the film, with the exception of like a couple of minor tracks that were in the background, was all provided beforehand. And it was the masters that Dondrea just described recording in a day. They were like, here they are, here's your tracks. And it wasn't going to change, and that's what it was going to be. And so it was really, really cool to be able to work with those like right from the beginning. And I'm sure, Sergio, that you playing the music on the set also really helped, because it just fit. Like the stuff that you guys shot and the music that I got fit together in ways that felt like exactly right. I mean, obviously we tweaked some stuff and moved some things around, because you always do, but I was never fighting to make the music fit with the story or anything like that. Like it was such a good match. And that was like really, really special, because as an editor, like I'm very, like I have a musical background as well, and like I'm very musically inclined, and I always want to try and create like these great sort of musical moments. And I actually had the opportunity to do that in this movie, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, and one thing I love about working with Jane is that you put so much time and effort into the audio, into the sound, which a lot of picture editors only see pictures and they're thinking about like overall arcs and narratives, and the thing, you get right into the weeds of, and that really helps me, because when we watch a scene, it's as close to, I mean, it's not, you know, finalized by any stretch, but it really helps, you know, experience the mood of what the scene is supposed to be about, having those sound elements in there. So
yeah, I think it's crucial. Like I would never, I don't understand. I know some editors just don't really do sound, and like that's their style. I would never not do that. Like to me, a film is all of those things. It's how it looks, how it sounds, both in terms of the music, in terms of just the sound effect, the background, like noise, like, you know, like I'm the person, like I'm the editor that like goes into a sound mix and gets mad that they didn't Foley something, because I'm like, I expected that there was going to be this sound here, and now it's not, and now it's all uneven, and now it's a mess, and then people are looking at me like I'm crazy because no one else is going to notice this. But yeah, I that's how I feel about cinema, is that it should be all of the senses, you know. So yeah.
What were some fond memories from working on the Cuban?
For me,
most fulfilling moments, and some of the most challenging.
You know, I think it was a very strange experience, because of course it was a small movie, and we had this office that was basically a building that had been sold but hadn't been turned over yet. So it was this completely a empty building where we like literally like moved in a mini fridge and like a little coffee machine. And it didn't have air conditioning. I mean, like, it was very weird. But it was quiet. This was nice. Because it was just us. So I spent a lot of time there just by myself. I didn't have an assistant editor for the movie because we didn't have money for that. So I was basically just sitting in the room by myself.
But would you like that anyway? Would you actually want an assistant? Because I know you're very hands-on, right?
I do enjoy having an assistant. Yes, I would have appreciated an assistant editor, but you know, if I don't have one, which I sometimes don't, I just do it myself because you got to do it yourself. So, I mean, it was a lot of really great moments of like working with Sergio. Getting the footage back from Cuba, I think, was probably the most exciting thing because I'd started cutting the other stuff. And then actually was cool because Sergio and I were able to talk a little bit. Like, I kind of assembled the movie and then left these gaps for where the Cuba stuff was going to go, which is, again, a luxury that you don't always have in indie filmmaking to essentially, I mean, it wasn't a pickup shoot, but it almost was like one because we got to make decisions, and Sergio actually changed some of his ideas before he left just to fit what we had in the film. And like, I remember looking at different transitions, like, oh, okay, we're going to move the camera this way. And then, so then he would note that when he went down to Cuba, he was going to do a complementary camera move and things like that, that just like often when you're on an indie movie, you don't have time to be able to plan that. So off he went.
A lot of ideas that I had to throw out the window and just say, oh my God, we're doomed. And then something better would come along. So yeah. Cuba was like that. You go in with a plan and then it just never materialized.
But
we got way up than it.
Because you had the movie in your head a little bit already, because you had seen this assembly, you were able to improvise in a way that you might not have been able to if you were just trying to shoot from the original script, for example. So yeah, so while you guys were in Cuba, I kept getting text messages from Sergio just being like, oh my God, I'm just drinking rum now. I don't know what to do. Like, this is like, this is all crazy. Like all these stories that Celiana was telling. And so I was like, okay, well, good luck. I hope, you know, you get some footage. And then they sent the stuff back. And I remember that same experience that Alessandra was talking about, like looking at, there's this one shot. So there's a bunch of footage of the Maricon of like them in the cars driving around. But then there's this one shot that they shot from like up above from this building. And it just like was this perfect moment. And I just looked at him and was like, this is amazing. Like, it was so exciting to see all of that stuff. So that was probably like one of the highlights, was just like anticipating receiving this stuff, then not being sure what it was going to be like after what I heard, and then having it be amazing. So
awesome. And Anna,
what am I talking about? Oh, what's the Cuban?
Cuban.
The
Some
Cuban.
of the highlights and what it meant for you as an artist, and
yeah. Well, I mean, the film for me was kind of like one never-ending highlight. You know, it was a highlight of getting to experience and learn what it is to be a producer, and I had two of the best mentors to learn from and watch. So that in itself was its own highlight, and then also getting to be part of that developmental stage with the film was also a huge asset for me as an actor, because I had the time that, you know, an actor wouldn't typically have with this character, especially in Canada. You know, you get booked and like you're shooting next week, and so you have no time to prep. But I had the luxury of time with the Cuban, so I was able to go to the Alzheimer's Society of Canada and take 2 of their courses to make sure that I was able to accurately represent the work of a nurse and a PSW. And then, of course, getting to know Sergio, you know, on a deeper level, which obviously gave us a huge luxury on set, because you knew what my buttons were and how to press them and how to really, you know, massage things out. So, of course, the other obvious highlights are the phenomenal cast, getting to work with Sheree, Giacomo, Lauren, everyone, but obviously Lou, who really is a legend and the most hilarious person ever. But getting to hear his stories of working inside the actor studio with Brando and Marilyn, and you realize what an incredible career this man has had. And so having the privilege and honor to work alongside him for sure was a major highlight for me.
Speaking of connecting to our elders, you know, he has so much wisdom to share. It's incredible. And I just want to say, I think I tricked everybody on here at the beginning saying, this is going to be a little movie, you know, we're going to start with we'll do a little short film, 5-person crew. It's just in the spirit of having fun with a group of friends. That's where it always starts. And it ended up here, where I think in the end, we had about 200 people work on it in some way, directly or indirectly. So yeah, it was amazing.
And it's not done yet.
Not done yet. So Alessandra, if you can just let people know where they can see the Cuban and kind of talk about our pivot plan to release this movie and bring it to audiences.
Sure. Well, like I said earlier, we our theatrical release was put on hold and everything was up in the air for a long time. But what's ended up happening, and I think I give a lot of credit to my fellow producers on this and our distributors at A71, we ended up being able to release the film. We came up with this really crazy idea to release the movie at drive-ins. Because we really wanted people to have the experience of seeing it on a big screen. And, you know, it seemed like just this crazy way to be able to bring it to people in a safe environment. But also the movie has a lot of themes from the 50s and images from the 50s, and the drive-in theater feels very 1950s. So it just all felt right. Our distributors at A71 loved the idea. We ended up signing a deal with Breakthrough Media in the US that also loved the idea. So it's going to be North America wide. Did I say Breakthrough again? Brainstorm Media. Sorry. Very different companies. So anyway, so they're releasing in the US at drive-in theaters and also virtually and in some traditional cinemas. But in Canada, we're doing a drive-in release. We're starting our very first big opening night is going to be at the Lavazza Drive-In Festival at Ontario Place, which is really exciting because they've erected a 60-foot screen and against the backdrop of the Toronto skyline. I mean, anything more phenomenal than that, I can't imagine. So that's going to be on July 20th. And then after that, on July 28th, this is brand new information. It's going to open at the Oakville Drive-In Theater, and there will be other dates after that. So stay tuned to all our social media and you'll find out.
I want to end on this. I know I'm going to go way off on a tangent, but I feel that it's fitting to kind of, you know, address the elephant in the room. If, as a group and as individuals, if you can give one piece of advice or thought on how we can achieve gender parity in the film industry, what would that be? What is your recommendation based on your experience? Start with Alessandra.
Oh, I'm glad you started with me because I have an answer for this. I feel like just work with the best people you can possibly imagine working with. I mean, that's how we collected this wonderful group of people on the Cuban. And, you know, it's almost in retrospect that we look back on it and say, you know, oh my God, all these departments are headed by women. And it wasn't really like, from our perspective, it wasn't really intentional necessarily, but it was just all the right people for the jobs. And there are people who are not even here, like our production designer, Kira was also is also female. Our costume designer, our production manager, there were technicians on set. Like, and the thing that was great about it is a lot of very non-traditional roles as well as more traditional roles. So that was our approach to this film, and I think if everybody is just very open and willing to get the best people they can, I think gender parity will happen. That's my feeling. But anyway.
Suliana?
I think one of the big problems that we are facing in, at least, you know, as you know, being a cinematographer is not that easy because it involves a lot of technical knowledge, but also artistic knowledge or talent, and but also producing knowledge in a way of how you are going to prepare for the movie, how you're going to deal with the producer, how. And what I've seen is that is nobody can teach us that. So I think first is education. I think we need every society in Canada, in Mexico, and everywhere. We need to be open to receive more women and support that they come to us looking for knowledge. And to whoever is listening to me right now, and anytime that you want to ask a question or come to see the set with me, Sergio is very open about that. We always have people on set that were not in the movie that came to, you have an assistant that was like a trainee and a woman too. So I think education is one of the parts that I think we're missing, Sergio, and how that we can talk to women to not be afraid of these jobs, you know, not to be, I know sometimes you feel that you top the glass, you know, it's no way to break through, but you do. But I know it's not easy and we have to work, you know, very hard. But I think I can tell you that I have feel the difference from 3 years to now. Like in 3 years, I've been almost 30 years in the business. 3 years is where finally people is not asking me if I can do the job. You know, they're not giving me an opportunity. They calling me because of my experience, because of my talent. Finally, 30 years later.
Is it true that someone asked you if you can carry a camera?
They have asked me if I can carry a camera. They have asked me if I'm capable to lead a male team, which I have done all my life. And yeah, stuff like that, because they see me, you know, like I am. They're not, you know, it's not a 6'3" guy with, you know, yeah, I can put the 535 millimeter camera on my shoulder, and I did it, and I'm still here. But yeah, I think education, Sergio, to how that we can communicate to them so they can feel they are more in the right or recognized in the right way. I think for me that's
great. D'Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, in music supervision, ironically, there are a lot of women music supervisors. So I feel like the role in itself, you know, we're pretty well off in that area. We are getting hired. There's a lot of women getting hired on TV and film, which is amazing. You know, in our community specifically, I think it's, you know, how we can open doors and opportunities for BIPOC and non-binary and trans people behind the camera, and providing opportunities for them. And in order to do that, we need the, you know, decision makers and the gatekeepers to provide those opportunities for them, to take the extra time to go and find them. Because they might not be, you know, searchable on the internet. You might need to make more phone calls and do more research. But at the end of the day, it does all come back down to education, because not everyone is able to have the privilege to go to school and have education. So it's, you know, I think our country needs to make some shifts in terms of how we can put funds and money and focus on providing opportunities, whether it's internship opportunities or mentorships, to get their foot in the room.
Jane?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And like D'Andrea said, I think the question about gender parity is similar to then how do we get more BIPOC creators, you know, in positions where they can be, you know, major decision makers and players in the industry. It's all kind of part of the same conversation, which to me, when I think about it, and I talk about it a lot with people, we have to figure out what the barriers to entry are for women and people of color and people with disabilities and all of that, and find out what those barriers are. And sometimes the barrier is education. Sometimes the barrier is that they lack the training, but that's not always the barrier. There's a lot of attrition. Like for me as an editor, I see a lot of young women start out as assistant editors or want to be editors, and then they move away from it because they, like Celiana talks about in her field as well. Like you hit a bit of a glass ceiling, you hit a point where people start asking you really annoying questions. Like I've been asked many times, like, oh, are you sure you can cut a war movie? I don't know what it would be like for a female sensibility to cut a war movie, or like things like that, where I'm just like, you know, you don't even know how to answer that question. And so you start, you know, when you're a young woman, at least my experience as a young woman was very positive. I found a lot of role models, a lot of mentors who were willing to help me. But then as you get older, there's a lot of reasons that women leave editing jobs, and might be similar to reasons that women leave production jobs as well, that have to do with a lot of other things in their lives, that have to do with family and the you know, the caregiving responsibilities that a lot of women have versus their partners who might be male. Like there's so many factors. And I think that the first thing to do is to start really take some time to talk to people, talk to women, which we're doing right now and which we continue to do. And WIFT is great about doing that. Talk to women, talk to people of color, talk to people in all of these sort of marginalized groups and say, what is it that you need to succeed? And then listen to them when they tell you that. Yeah.
Great. Anna?
At this point, being last, I feel like there's not much more to add to the conversation. So I'll just mirror everybody else's sentiments, which is I do think it begins with education, and then I think having it be a conversation is a really good start. But of course, that needs to be followed up with action. Oftentimes with any sort of movement, especially now, it's like, okay, we're talking, but what are we going to do to change it? So to Jane's point, it's like, yes, identifying what the barriers are and then finding ways to knock them down. I'm sure, Alessandra, you've experienced it even on the production side, and as did I, being like, you know, when we started developing it, 19-year-old girl who was on a soap and trying to produce. So yeah, I think it all starts with education and having it be an active conversation.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I think probably there needs to also be, when I think about making a movie and all the elements that go into it, there's the everything that happens in the development stage and before, and then there's everything that happens after, like in the editing room and all the, you know, all the post-production. But I think about the production itself and how that has traditionally been such a macho environment. It's like the film, I think they say it's the last bastion of machismo in the arts. And that breaking that down, I think, is probably the very first thing that has to happen, because there are a lot of people who've been working in this industry for a very long time, and they're accustomed to a set running a certain way and being very male dominated. I haven't personally had that experience so much because, you know, I come at it, you know, from the producing end and from the writing end, but I do know that that happens a lot. And I think once that mentality sort of starts to evolve and change, it'll really help a lot. I guess the question is how, but, you know, yeah, it's a conversation for sure.
Well, I want to thank you all for taking the time, and WIFT for hosting this. And I just want to say what a pleasure it's been to work with all of you. It certainly upped my game, and it just made making the Cubans such an incredible experience that I'll never forget. And I hope people will enjoy it in drive-in theaters in a neighborhood near you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, all of you, everyone, for sharing your stories and your background and then your experiences on this show, or on this particular film. And what a great way to end. Thank you, Sergio, because everything that you spoke about are all the things that WIFT's mandate is to address. We want to provide people with the opportunity to build their business sense, to build their skills base, to learn how to network and get into the positions where they are the decision makers. And then hopefully that's when these problems start to become not problems. So that's our mandate, and we want to thank you all for recognizing that and for being such great trailblazers and fabulous talents within the industry. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your stories with us today. So Everyone, know that we will be posting this interview on our Vimeo channel, so we'll circulate that information afterwards. And thank you again, and I really look forward to seeing this picture, and I wish you much success with your wide release.
Thank you so much.
So much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Thank
it's
you.
raining here in Toronto.
Bye,
Fun.
everyone.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.